The interview I have for you today is with an APP Residency Director at an orthopedic clinic. And he's going to talk to us about the role. This is a great interview for anyone who is interested in teaching and mentorship, but don't necessarily want to go teach at a PA or an NP program. Developing an APP residency in your organization might be a great option for you. The PA that I'm interviewing is going to talk a little bit about the benefits of residency programs to organizations and some of the things that you have to think about if you want to try to get one of these off the ground. Hi, it's Michelle with the Medicine Couch. Thank you for joining me today. The goal of the channel is to help PAs and NPs discover all the opportunities open to us. If you like the work that I do and you want to help support my channel, please hit the subscribe button and share videos that you find interesting with other friends and colleagues who also might enjoy the video. All right, well, let's hear from this PA about residencies and being a residency director.
My name's Jason. I'm an orthopedic PA. My current role is director of APPs and then a program director for our residency program. I've been a PA since 2020.
So we're going to talk about your residency director job, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path to get to this point?
Yeah, so right out of school, I came out kind of during COVID and all of that chaos, and I spent some time being the on-site provider for like a vaccine clinic. From there, I worked in urgent care for about 6 months, 6.5 months, something like that, while I was trying to find my way into my passion, which is orthopedics, right? So
Yeah.
I want to do sports med. I was lucky to find a job in orthopedics where I got to do a residency and learn a lot of on-the-job training, and then coming out of that residency, get to practice sort of top of scope as a sports med APP. And then from there was offered the opportunity to kind of take the helm of that residency program and work side by side with the previous director to kind of build it up and grow it out, and had been doing that. And then about 6 or 8 weeks ago was offered the opportunity to take over as director of APPs for kind of the same company. And so I didn't leave my old role. I just took on a new one. So I'm still director of the residency at the same time, but I have some help now. And we've got some academic faculty that steps in and that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing about PAs moving more into leadership roles. You did a residency yourself and now you direct these residence programs. So, will you tell us how you think that they are helpful for PAs and if you recommend them to people?
Sometimes, right? It's not right for every person. There are some people who go straight into specialty out of undergrad and have phenomenal success. So
Mhm.
by no means do I think a residency is the only way to get there. I think it's the best way to get 3 years of experience in 12 to 13 months, though, right? And that's sort of
Right.
what we talk about with our residents when they come in is, look, what I want from you when you're done with a year here is to feel like you've done ortho for 3 years. And if I put you up against the general ortho PA who started doing it straight out of school or who has 2 years of urgent care and a year of ortho under their belt, I want you to be comparable or ahead, right? And we can do that because that's all you do all day, every day. So for some
Yeah.
people, it's the right answer. Same for oncology or cardiology or urology. There are 80s plus like accredited residencies, and then I don't know how many more unaccredited ones across the country right now. And there's a reason for that, right? People are
Yeah.
finding success with it. So short version, yes, great. No, not for everybody.
In my mind, I think of residencies as being run by these big organizations, these big healthcare systems, right? That has these big programs they can rotate people through. But I know you said your practice is smaller, and I've seen other smaller practices start offering their own in-house residencies. Are you seeing these becoming more popular? And what do you think are the pros and cons of that?
I think you're seeing them more and more because people are finding the value both as an organization and to the residents who come through, right? Because it's a two-way pathway. One, it gives you an opportunity to train people to be exactly the providers you need them to be. So post graduation, you have a pool of applicants to who can be great for your place of work. So from there, I think you will see that some more. The word accreditation sometimes gets a little scary when it comes to
Yeah.
academic stuff like that, right? And so what it really breaks down to is the way the accreditation standards are set up right now. If you're not attached to an academic center or a major hospital, it's impossible to get accreditation, even if you meet all the other
Yeah.
metrics. And so there's no difference in the academic rigor that we apply through like a small private practice program like ours or the ones that you
Right.
get at big hospital systems. Honestly, I would suggest that sometimes the smaller ones are harder, but not always. But I think that that's some of it, right? So the reason you see so many attached to big things is because the way accreditation is currently designed, it requires a partnership or at least an attachment to either an academic system or a large hospital system. And so people Google around and go, oh, it's not accredited. So never mind, I'm not going to apply there, right? And it depends on
Yeah.
sort of what you're trying to get out of it. I will tell you, of all the residents that we've graduated before I came through the program, now or after, I have never once, and neither did my predecessor, been asked about accreditation. Every
Right.
single phone call I've taken or interview I've taken has said, "Hey, did they complete your program? How did they do? What's it look like? What's their strength and weakness?" Like very standard job stuff.
Right.
I follow up with all of our residents, whether they stay with us or they move to another location. And one of the things that I consistently hear back is nobody really pushes back on residency trained. They go, "Yep, you did a residency.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go."
The residencies I've looked at, most of them are kind of looking for new grads, or they seem like they're geared to new grads. Does your residency allow people to come apply to the residency even if they've been working for several years?
Yep. So we don't select out by time. I would say the vast majority of our applicants are new grads, right? Because they come to us either through like they're on a student rotation with us or schools that we precept for, tell them about our program or something. Well, I mean, we're a small practice, right? So we're not all over the news or a giant marketing
Yeah.
machine. But we've had a couple people come through who have had practice before they've come here, and it was okay. The trickiest part for that, honestly, is really two things. One, residencies don't typically pay as well as being a PA for 3 years or whatever, or 5 years or 10 years or things like that. So coming into a residency, even if they pay really well for a residency, you're going to take a pay cut, right? And nobody wants to do that. No criticism there. It's just the way it is.
Right.
And two, it is harder to teach and to train somebody to change specialties than it is somebody who's never specialized. That's not a mark against a good applicant, but it's a thing that we have
Right.
to consider. If you got 5 years of bad ortho habits because it's been in urgent care where they don't really teach you that, then I have to unteach those
Right.
and reteach the good ones.
So, kind of circling back when we were talking about the pay in residencies, can you give kind of a general range of what you're seeing out there?
It's a pretty wide variance, right? I think if you were going to set a window like you were Indeed or something, it would probably say between like 50 and 80, right? And there are outliers sort of on either side, right? There are programs that are slightly above that 80 mark, and I don't know that I've heard of one that's below 50, but there are a lot
Yeah.
in that like 50, 60, 70 range because it's considered education, right? And
Right.
so you're getting paid effectively a salary, but they're calling it a stipend to be a resident and get that resident academic education. It's all over the map and it's not specialty specific. So there are residencies in the same specialties that have $20,000 differences in pay
Mm.
based on their program model. So it's not like
Right.
doing a really CT surgery is paying way better than urology or
Right.
whatever, right? It's all over the map.
In addition to salary and, of course, having malpractice insurance, what benefits do they get generally?
I can't speak to everybody else's,
Right.
but ours get a regular PTO schedule. They get CME days and CME money.
Oh, nice.
They get the same holidays and everything else that our
Okay.
senior PAs do. They have the opportunity to contribute in the 401k and health benefits and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the same general benefit package that our APPs have, our residents have access to.
Let me ask you how kind of your residency program is structured.
Yeah, so ours is built on really three pillars, right? So we have an academic pillar where we follow the academic curriculum of the PGY1, PGY2 orthopedic surgery physician residents.
Yeah.
So OrthoBullets has an established curriculum that is a year long. It's an academic curriculum with daily readings and schedules of like topics that you cover and everything like
Yeah.
that. And so we mirror that curriculum and then we add some customization to it based on the CAQ blueprint for PAs specifically, right? And
Oh, okay.
so to get a CAQ in orthopedic surgery, you have to have 2 years of experience. So new grads aren't ready to take the test after the residency on paper, but they are ready, right? And so our
Right.
goal for our residents is on an academic level, they could pass the CAQ the day they graduate.
Mm.
And they can. We have practice tests. We've seen it. There's no doubt. So pillar one, academics, that includes like workshops and journal clubs. And then 3 or 4 times a week, we have protected academic time. We're pretty spread out. So we have residents spread across multiple clinics in a pretty big geographic area. So we do our academics via Zoom or Teams, like a tele version. And we have a
Mm.
didactic topic list that you think like almost like academic conference, like you'd see at a hospital, where they have a specific set of diagnoses that they teach. They teach us. So the residents build the presentations and then faculty sits in and asks questions and kind of
Okay.
guides it. Second pillar is clinical excellence. So they sit side by side with a senior APP every day in clinic, and they're learning on the job clinical skills to do. So procedures and how to read different types of radiographs and how to apply casting and splinting and all the stuff that an ortho APP has to do. And then we have a third pillar that's personal professional development. So one of the big gaps, I think, when it comes to education for professionals in general is how to be one, right? We're going to teach you all the stuff about, in our case, diagnosing and treating a billion different conditions, but what does that mean on how to build a team or how to be a leader in your clinic or how to deal with a hard situation or how to develop a psychologically safe environment? Those aren't things that we talk about, right? So that's a little bit of personal and professional, but that doesn't even include how to understand billing and coding or how to understand that healthcare is a business and where you are in that, right? Don't be a cog, be a driving force. We don't learn that in school. And
No.
that's through no fault of the programs. The programs are already long and they're already chock full of things,
Right.
but basic financial literacy, right? Like you're a professional with a big boy paycheck now. What do you do with that? Right? For a
Right.
lot of people, it's your first real paycheck, like real paycheck. And you go, wow, I'm young, I'm single, I got all this money. Well, right. And you have the opportunity to set yourself up really, really well. But nobody tells you that.
Right.
And so we've worked really hard with our director of cultural development and leadership to put together a curriculum of personal professional development that's its own standalone part of what we do. And then we still have like personal professional development days interspersed throughout the entire curriculum where we talk about stuff like building a practice or how to read a journal article or how to develop goals and everything like that. So those are the three pillars:
Yeah.
academic, clinical, and personal professional development. And what I love about our program in specific is just the way that we progress them forward. There's not a like direct benchmark, like, all right, at this date, you will be covering your own clinic and your own patient panel, right? It's very much based on their own progression, like a set of what we expect them to do, and then what the mentor PAs or APPs are seeing with them as they come through the program. They go, hey, they're ready, right? And then they can pick up a day where they cover the weekend in clinic, or they pick up a different day. And you never really know what you know until you're by yourself. But yeah, clinical excellence. So they're in clinic side by side. They eventually cover their own clinic and build up their own patient panel of people that they're seeing so that they can learn what that's like.
When these residents are seeing patients on their own, are they billing? So they're actually bringing in money to the practice as well?
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
depends on the setup, right? So initially, they're just seeing patients underneath their senior APP, whoever that is. But yeah, when they're on their own or they're running their own patient panel or they're covering the clinic for a weekend, they are responsible for appropriately billing and coding their visits and signing their notes and learning how to do all of that.
Yeah. So how long is your residency program?
Yeah, so our program's a year and 2 weeks really, right? Because you have 2 weeks of onboarding that don't really account for the academic curriculum, which is about a year long. But that's the didactic part, right? And so I mentioned earlier that our clinical progression was based a little bit on where you're at, right? Not everybody develops at the same speed, which is true. But there comes a time where the rubber meets the road. You got to be able to see some people.
Right.
And what I found over the last couple of years here is that we think you're ready or they're ready before they think they're ready.
Right.
And I'm right every time. They don't believe it until you let them.
Yeah.
So sometimes, the birdie gets pushed out of the nest so they can fly, right? That's sort of how it goes. But typically, like within the first 3 months, they're in a place where they can see people on their own a day a week or 2 weekends a month or whatever they're covering, right? Like
Yeah.
they're ready at that point. And if there's anything complicated, there's always somebody to call.
And so how many residency slots do you guys typically have every year?
It depends. So right now, it's usually three-ish per cohort, and we take two cohorts a year on average. We'll make exceptions to that number if we have exceptional people, both
Yeah.
up and down, right? So I'm not going to just fill a cohort because 30 people applied for three spaces. Like if we only have two really good
Right.
candidates, then we're only going to bring on two. But the other way is also true. If there are just four rock star humans that need to be part of this residency and or a part
Yeah.
of our organization in general, then we'll find a way to make it work.
Okay, so let's shift gears from talking about the residency to talking about the residency director role, because I think that this something that like most PAs don't even think about, or it's not on their radar, that is something that we can move into.
So I'm in charge of maintaining our curriculum. So any additions or subtractions that we take into or out of the didactic portion, I'm in charge of the hiring and decision making, although we've opened that up to include some of our lead APPs who are faculty academically for our residents now. They come in on the interviews as well. So I oversee like the administrative and day-to-day management of that. I lead a lot of the academic rounds that we do. So I'm in on that. I lead most of the workshops that we do. Although some of that, as I step into this new role, that will get spread out among some other people. But mostly the administration and management of the program, right? So I'm the marketing department for it. I am the faculty for it, and I'm the fallback for it, right? So I
Yeah.
like to see myself, and I hope the residents feel this way, as sort of a mentor or an umbrella to where anything they run into, whether it's operational or clinical or academic, like they can come back to me and I can help them with that issue.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I love the idea of that kind of a position because I know a lot of people would like to teach, but they don't want to move solely into academics, like teach at a PA program. And this sounds like really interesting because you can kind of mold people, but you're dealing with people who are already PAs. And so you get to really specialize and help them grow. But I wonder about like the program itself. Is this something you developed or was it already developed and you stepped into?
So it existed before me. There were three classes before mine, maybe four, and it was just kind of constantly evolving. And so part of the way that I landed in this spot was during my time as a resident. I'm an idea guy. So I was like, hey, we should try this. And hey, we should do this thing. And what if we did this here? And to my advantage, our residency director at the time was fantastic about like, yeah, that's a great idea, run with it. Right. And we were able to kind of grow stuff out. And then sort of down the road, this opportunity came up for me to step into that role. And one of the first questions I asked was, well, what can I do with it? And the answer was whatever you want. Right. And so I've been able since then to sort of like solidify the lines in the sandbox. All the sand was already there. We just kind of
Right.
put the lines around the outside. And the curriculum's constantly evolving, right? As we see areas of like academics where we want people to focus, or we go, okay, cool, we're learning this really nitpicky thing, but it's not relevant to your day-to-day practice. Let's rather include this instead. Like you can do some read on
Right.
your own on these 5 topics. Constantly evolving our workshops to kind of fit the needs of the skill sets that we've got in our residents. Some of them get really well versed in diagnostic ultrasound use, and so we don't
Yeah.
have to workshop that so heavily, right? And then they need to work on their splinting or their casting or injections or whatever. So I've been able to really mold it a lot from where it was when we started with it, but it had a good foundation as I stepped in.
So if people want to do this, if they work in a practice, and I assume it's got to be a practice that has at least a decent size to it so that they have room to incorporate these residents. But if they're thinking that they'd like to have a residency program at their particular organization, is that something you would encourage PAs to kind of push for?
I think it's worth a conversation, right? And one of the things is there has to be a need for it. It can't just be, hey, I want to teach people clinical stuff. There has to be a need for it for specialized training or generalized training, I guess, if it's a like family med or internal med or something like that. But also, you have to understand sort of what the back end looks like, right? So on paper, it sounds just like this, at least for me, this dream job. Like I love what I do. And it feels that way a lot of the time. When I am able to be in clinic and face to face and teaching people like, hey, let's do this, and then see them go implement that with a patient and sort of expand my footprint, which is why I stepped into this role in the first place, is it let me impact more people than I can by myself. Nothing's better than that as part of my job. It's awesome, right? But to get there, there are meetings and budgetary concerns and behind the scenes spreadsheets and all this other stuff. So I would encourage people to think really through what that means before presenting an idea, right? Because if you go,
Yeah.
hey, boss, I have this cool idea. We should do a residency program so that we can, one, it'll let us see more patients and we will be able to train people. And I love teaching, all of which are fantastic. Their first response is going to be, well, how much is it going to cost me and what am I going to get back? Which is a reasonable question. And it's something that people fail to consider because regardless of where you are in that pay scale, right? We talked earlier about a range of outcomes. It's
Hmm.
still expensive to fund, and
Yeah.
that's just salary. Not We're not talking malpractice insurance and getting people
Yeah.
credentialed and all the stuff that goes along with being a provider. So you have to
Yeah.
understand that side of it, and then what it takes to develop an academic curriculum. Because it's really easy to say, "I like to teach stuff," but to formalize it into an annualized calendar and to have readings and assignments and to-do lists and all that stuff is it's pretty involved.
Well,
So if
yeah.
people listen to that rant and still think it's a cool idea, then I think it's an awesome idea, right? I think that you're going to see it
Yeah.
happen. You just have to ask the small questions as well as the big ones.
And what are the benefits to an organization like yours to have an internal residency program besides being able to train up people how you want them?
Yeah, well, that's a big benefit, right? And not to be understated. So
Right.
I know for a fact, without question, when our residents finish our program, if we have an opening, they're the best people to fill that spot,
Yeah.
right? Better than any outside orthopedic PA that I know because they understand the small things that we teach, the leadership that we expect, how to build a practice and the business side, because they learn all of that. So, that benefit aside, it really is a couple of different things. One, mentorship causes providers to thrive and learn and grow. So your senior PAs and NPs will be better if they have to mentor someone else. Not everybody's interested in doing it, but if you kind of put it underneath, they are better for it. I have to learn stuff every day. We do academic
Right.
rounds and they ask a question and I go, man, I don't know. Right. And so I have to go learn a new thing and I'm supposed to know
Yeah.
everything. Right. And
Right.
um, so there's that, right? Your other providers will be better because they'll want to. They'll want to set an example. They'll want to train people.
Yeah.
Two, as the program moves along, they expand your availability, right? So our residents do see their own patient panels. So we as a company are seeing more people, right? So
Right.
we have a bigger impact on our community, which is great. We have more availability for patients, which is great. And we see more people, which is great for the organization. And I think three, it can establish you as a group, right? So, like I said a long time ago, we can't retain every resident who comes through,
Right.
right? We're not growing that fast. But I do know that when they leave and they go work somewhere else, they're ready to go. And I know that other local groups go, oh man, that person came from the residency over there and they're
Yeah.
awesome. So they know when they
Yeah.
need people. I get phone calls all the time like, hey, you have a cohort that's going to graduate. Do you have an upcoming class? I'm looking for an APP. I'd love to get some to apply. But that too, right? Name recognition in a community is
Right.
important. So
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Roughly how large is your organization? How many clinics do you guys run?
10. So we have 10
Okay.
clinics and twice that many APPs somewhere in there. Lots of surgeons and different service lines and all that kind of stuff. But our side of the house, there are 10 clinics.
When you went to the residency director, did that become a totally non-clinical role, or were you still seeing like a certain schedule?
I still had a clinical schedule. I still do now. It's a little bit lighter than it was before just because I have more things that I have to be doing. I don't know that I'm interested in getting to a point where I don't, even if it's
Yeah.
only every couple of weeks or whatever. Like I really enjoy the relationship dynamic that we can build with people. And so for me, one of the hard parts is letting go of that piece.
I'm curious about the pay for a residency director, and I'm not asking you to tell us how much you make, but just in general, was it almost like a lateral move or stepping into a PA residency director position? Did that increase your salary? And if so, was it significant?
That's interesting. So it didn't really increase my salary. Like when I stepped into the residency director role, it changed it a little bit, right? And I suspect that's probably true across most organizations where there are a lot of times where fully clinical providers they have a salary and then there's some RVU incentive or something like that. And then if you're not seeing people, then your RVU incentive is going to go down. So my pay structure changed. And I
Okay.
guess that's the best way for me to put it.
So it tended to be more of a lateral move in your situation.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm curious, you still practice clinically some, you're running the residency, and now you're APP director. Like, how many hours a week are you working now?
I jokingly tell people all the time, all of them. Right. So that's hard to quantify in that I try to be available kind of whenever. And if people are working off hours, my phone rings all the time.
Yeah.
So I am available pretty much always. I probably work 45 or 50 hours a week, somewhere in that window. There are weeks where it's more, there are weeks where it's less. It just sort of depends.
Yeah, so it's quite the commitment if you're looking to do this or step into an APP residency director role, what I'm hearing from you. What kind of credentials did you have going into this? Did you have anything before PA school that kind of helped prepare you to be able to do this role?
Yeah, so I took an interesting road to PA school, right? I was a non-traditional grad, so I didn't go to PA school until I was in my mid 30s.
Mm.
I know I look like I'm 25, but I'm not. No, I went to PA school in my mid 30s. I had worked in lots and lots of different things, everything from retail to finance. I spent a lot of time working in a leadership role and doing like some veteran outreach, nonprofit leadership, and leadership and development training. So I had that piece. And then after school, I got the opportunity, like I said, to kind of see like how a vaccine clinic ran and how an urgent care ran. And then while I was doing my residency, and I don't recommend this, but while I was doing my residency, I also started working on my doctorate. So my doctorate of medical science through University of Lynchburg, and it focused a lot on leadership and
Oh,
advocacy and administrative stuff. And I got some additional qualifications in healthcare management and leadership and development trainings through the same program. So I ended up finishing my residency and my doctorate and like two doctoral certificates, kind of all in a little
wow.
chunk of time. Right. Sounds really impressive. It's an awful idea. No one should do that. Don't do it. I'm not recommending it. You asked me my credentials. That's the only reason I brought it up. But it did equip me to look at more than just the clinical side, right? So I think the
Yeah,
opportunity to work on my doctorate and take some leadership development classes and some healthcare administration and sort of understand the bigger picture, both good
right.
and bad, of the healthcare machine has made me better at the administrative side of my job.
And then just to be clear, you're not saying that the doctorate was a bad idea. It was just a bad idea to do it at the same time with your residency, right?
Correct. The doctorate was a fantastic idea. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I would do it again. I would just do it the year after did my residency, not while
Right.
I was doing it. And I took
Yeah.
my doctorate took me 15 months instead of a year or 18 months, whatever it was, because I pushed some classes out because it was too much, right? I couldn't
Yeah.
do my resident responsibilities and that at the same time. And I mean, it's turned out fine, right? It's
Yeah.
opened up some doors for me from a leadership perspective that I don't think would have been open otherwise. So
Yeah.
worth it in the long run. But it was, embrace the suck for a tiny window of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, anything else that you want to share with us about being a residency director?
I think being a residency director is hard because you have to learn to be an administrator and a clinician at the same time. You have to understand stuff and talk about stuff that you wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
So it's hard, but it's also incredibly gratifying. I've said it several times, with the opportunity to expand my footprint and kind of mold young providers and help them become both better at our profession, but also just better professionals and hopefully, honestly, better people, right? They come out of
Yeah.
it a little bit with some personal growth.
Thank you, Jason, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, happy to. And if people watch the video back and they have questions, you got my contact. They're welcome to reach out. I'm happy to talk about it anytime.
Thanks for watching. And as always, take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.